Welcome to the Live Better, Sell Better podcast with your host, Kevin Dorsey of Inside Sales Excellence, the #1 Patreon group and YouTube channel for tech sellers and tech sales leaders, where we dive in deep for tactical advice on how to book more meetings, close more deals faster, and lead sales teams to success. But we don't stop there. We also focus on the person in salesperson. We talk about mindset, goals, time management, and so much more. So thank you for listening. And if you're interested, head on over to patreon.com/inside sales excellence. Now with that, grab a notepad, get ready, and let's dive into the good stuff. What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Live Better, Sell Better podcast. This is your host, Kevin Dorsey, aka KD. And oh boy, this is going to be a fun one today. This is going to be a fun one today because we are going to be diving into how leaning into your own authentic self can actually be the superpower that takes you to a whole nother level in sales. Because if we think about the sales industry, right, we have a diversity problem, right? One of my good friends, Cynthia Barnes, said it's been pale, male, and stale for too long. And I have someone on the show today to talk about how leaning into the opposite, leaning into the unique skill sets and personalities as a woman, not only can separate you, but help you rise the ranks in your career. Because I have Heidi Solomon-Orlick on the show today. Heidi is the Vice President of Global Sales at VXI Global. She has driven revenues and personally closed over $1 billion in her career. She is the founder and CEO of GirlzWhoSell. And if you're watching me right now, she actually sent me a hat in the mail because she knows I'm a black hat aficionado. So we are going to be diving into this career path and how leaning in, going against the grain has actually helped her in her career. And now she's helping so many others. Heidi, welcome to the show.
Katie, thank you so much for having me. I'm super pumped about this.
Like when I came across the profile and I dove into Girls Who Sell, and I was like, she's got to be on the show. I was like, she needs to be on the show. And so when I hit you up and I said, all right, like what's the superpower? Where do we want to take this conversation? I thought your answer was very cool and very unique. Where I want to talk about leaning into the skills of being a woman. And I've never heard it phrased that way before, right? The unique things there, right, that you leaned into. So let's go backstory here a little bit, because you're like, I was told to act like a man. I was told I had to present myself a certain way. Let's talk about kind of what triggered this path for you.
Yeah. So, I started in a sales career about 35 years ago. So it ages me a bit, but, it was and continues to be incredibly male dominated in professional sales. I love Cynthia Barnes and her representation of that. I mean, she just nailed it. That is perfection. And, when I started out, there weren't a lot of female role models. I didn't, my mom was a traditional stay-at-home mom. My father was one of the best salespeople that I ever knew, and probably was the person that I emulated the most, as I was considering a career in sales. But like so many other women, I fell into it. It definitely was not an intentional career choice. But when I got into it, I realized that I didn't, I didn't really understand what it was going to take to be successful. And so because there were so many men in the industry, the guidance I was given and a lot of the books that were out there and some of the thought leaders in sales and sales process, was, well, just be like a man, right? Like that's the way to be successful in sales. And if you can master that, you should be able to have a long and illustrious career. And I tried that. And guess what? I really sucked at it. It felt inauthentic to me. It was not a sustainable way of being. And, I was uncomfortable in it because at the time, a lot of deals were being made on the golf courses and in bars and, strip clubs and whatever, right? Like it was a very different kind of sale, than it is today, which is much more consultative. And so I decided that that didn't work for me, and I was just going to lean in to my innate skills of being a woman, and really amplify my femininity. And ultimately, KD, that is what has ended up serving me well and being my superpower, because it is a
I love
competitive
that.
differentiator.
True story it is. And we're going to unpack all of this. Like, I'm so pumped to go here right now, because one of my favorite things to ask as a leader, I encouraged my, team to do this too, is like, what if we did the opposite? And always love to ask that question. Like, what if we did the opposite? Like, this is what we're doing. What if we did the opposite? And it sounds like you had that same trigger event. It's like, everyone's telling me I need to be this way. And then you made that trigger of like, well, what if I did the opposite? What if I leaned into who I am here? So let's talk about what that means, right? When you started to lean into your unique skills, your authentic self, what changed?
I realized that that there were some skills, and I want to frame this as a, to say that I don't want to put people into boxes. That is not my thing. There are some men that have very good emotional intelligence skills, and there are some women who act more like men, and it serves them well, right? So both sides of the spectrum, but for me, I can only share from my perspective, that I realized that being more feminine was was an advantage, and actually, the buyers at the time, and it's changing too, so we can unpack this a little bit as well. But we're also very male, that were in decision making capabilities at the companies that I was selling to. And so I realized that, my innate traits of being a really good listener, coming from a place of empathy, really focusing on understanding my product and the benefit of my product or service that I was selling versus just a sort of schmoozing used car salesman relationship type thing, which, worked, right? But for me, it didn't. So really focusing on, being able to expand my knowledge of the service that I was selling so that I could sell at all levels of the organization. I'm super detail oriented, and I'm incredibly process oriented, which is sometimes surprising as a salesperson, right? But those are the things that I was really good at. I'm a problem solver. I like taking on challenges and being faced with those challenges and figuring out how to move the needle and make a difference. And then I'm a relationship builder. So for me, none of the sales that I was focusing on were one and done, like I was going to come in and then leave and throw it over the fence. I just was really focused on building long-term relationships and understood that, especially in a complex sales process, this is not an overnight thing. It definitely takes time to build those relationships. So that's just some of the things that I was able to focus on. I was a good active listener. Men and women have different listening skills, I think. Women tend to listen to understand, whereas men tend to listen to respond. And so I really took a step back and realized that it was important to listen to my prospects so that I could truly understand their pain points. And think about that 35 years ago. I mean, that was, I guess, pretty progressive in terms of an overall approach. And I've just continued to build on those skills. I mean, today it's called, EQ. That wasn't even a thing back then, but
Right.
it was, I was doing that before it was even cool.
Mhm. I want to take one step, like, because there's a lot I want to unpack here. Because I also agree with everything you're saying right now. But one thing I want to unpack is, I'm trying to think how to ask this question. Why did you stay? So you were in an environment that you were being told to do things a certain way, and instead of getting out, you evolved.
Yeah.
why, like, you get what I'm asking here? Because I think sometimes, women, it's always touchy. So, like, women can get into that situation, they don't like it, so then they leave it and they go to something that where you stayed and evolved. Why? Like, what, like, you get what I'm asking here? It's like, how many, like, 'cause
I
I love
do,
this. Like, how many
and
people,
it's probably because 'cause I'm stubborn as hell, and I wasn't gonna let it beat me. I was a competitive athlete. I was an alternate on the US equestrian team. I grew up, eventing, and, for me, taking on these challenges was, not something that I was gonna shy away from, so, perhaps it's just that I was out to prove a point, and I was really good at what I did. So I closed a lot of business. I was super successful. I was making really good money. I was in the top 1% of my industry, absolutely 100% for sure. I was always making President's Club. So despite the sort of culture and environment, I was able to find my way and do it my way. And and then what became important was, and I guess now the reason my life's mission is really running Girls Who Sell is because I wanted to show other women how to do it. Because I think you're right. I mean, turnover in sales is really high. A lot of women get into it and they're like, oh God, this is so not for me. Right. This whole bro culture thing is just, I'm out. Right. And so showing women how to navigate through that and how to be successful and still, be able to balance life's demands and family and all the other things that we have going on. I mean, listen, through this whole thing, I gave birth to 3 children and raised 3 boys and have a 28-year marriage. And so that was it. I also really loved what I did, you know. So I love solving business problems, and I got to work with some really cool clients in industries along the way as the BPO industry evolved, from just being very commoditized and US based to starting to become more international. I grew with the business. It's sort of like a fish growing to the size of its tank. And so as the industry evolved globally, I've gotten to work all over the world, travel all over the world, work with people from, very diverse cultures. I've created thousands and thousands of jobs. So not only a lot of revenue for the companies that I work for, but for me, what I do is not necessarily brain surgery, but I love the fact, and what gets me up in the morning is that through my sales, um, success, that I'm also able to generate jobs for people around the world, and people, the trickle down effect of that is enormous. So, it wasn't only to just prove someone wrong and prove that I can do it, but I really genuinely loved what I did, that what I do and what I did and the impact I was having in the world. And now I'm all about showing other women how to do that.
I love that. That because, like, that is something where, oftentimes in life, something is harder, is challenging. We have to make that choice. Do we evolve? Do we lean into it, or do we just make a change? And so I love, like, you called out it was hard, but then
It's
you
still
stuck
hard.
with it. Right? Yeah, it's still hard, right? We're far from perfect in any of this right now, and that's actually kind of two lanes I want to take this. I want to go down one lane of, like, specific to women, right? Like, how you empower them, what they can do. But then I also then want to flip it to the flip side of, like, for male led teams and male leaders in the industry, what they can and should be doing to better support women in the industry. Because I agree, and I am on record saying this, that women are better at sales than men for a lot of the reasons that you've listed. Tend to be better listeners, tend to be more empathetic. My personal favorite is they also tend to use more descriptive language.
Truth.
Emotion. We all know this is hilarious, right? We know people make decisions emotionally. Descriptive language triggers emotion better, right? Whereas males tend to be more like 0-1 versus, like, descriptive language. Getting into the emotion behind the sales, I also think, is very important here. So let's go down the path of, like, to the women that are in sales right now or considering, how do they lean in? Like, how do they lean into some of these things, the listening, the empathy, the understanding? Like, how do they lean into that more and really own that versus trying to evolve into something that they are not not and should not be?
Yeah, I love that. Those are great questions. And when you talk about, emotion, I think that's another thing that I didn't mention, but I think women are very naturally good at is storytelling, right? And so, I think when you base your approach on telling stories, it does trigger that emotion, and that results in a much stronger connection, right? And listen, at the end of the day, we're in the people business and we're about connecting. So that is really important. I'll take it in two routes because girls. So there's women who are already in sales, right? And then there are women who are not even aware that sales is a viable career option for them. So let me tackle the first thing first. For women who are already in sales, I really, when I mentor them, I really coach them to try to get in touch with their authentic selves. So what is it that is their superpower? And an exercise that I take women through a lot as I'm coaching them or mentoring them is to begin unpacking or taking a look at some of the pivotal moments in your life. And they can be big, massive, big decision moments of, do I keep dating the guy that I'm dating, or do I break up with him and marry this other person or whatever, right? Like big moments or a death in the family, or, like there's big things that happen, and at those transformational moments and crossroads in your life, you make decisions, right? Um, and then there's micro moments along the way, right? That have an impact, and beginning to take a look at what decisions that you made at those moments and how do you leverage that as your superpower. So, I'll give you an example, right? Um, for me, when I was 12, so I grew up in a family where we didn't talk about our emotions very much, right? And it was a time. Think about the late 1950s, early 1960s, when I was 12 years old, and um, moms and dads didn't argue in front of their children, right? They argued behind closed doors, and this was an evening where my mother and father got in a huge fight, and it woke me up, and I was sitting in front of their bedroom door listening to them argue, and my dad subsequently walked out of the door and looked at me and said, "I just can't take it anymore. I am out of here." Right? I am out. Goodbye, and left. And my mom looked at me and said, Heidi, I just want to tell you, if you learn one thing, never rely 100% on a man and always have your own money. And she went in and slammed her door. Now I'm 12, right?
That's
And I'm
heavy.
like,
That's heavy.
what do I do with this? So it's probably no surprise that I entered into a career where I could have financial independence. It's probably no surprise that I married a man that ended up being a stay-at-home dad, and I was the primary breadwinner. And it's probably no surprise that I now run a company that teaches women how to have financial independence, right? So that's an example of pivotal moments. But how did that serve me, right? Because some of these things, um, and maybe I went down into a completely different rabbit hole and didn't answer your questions. But when I talk to women, I try to have them get in touch with some of these moments and what is serving them well and what is not serving them well. Because sometimes your superpower can also be your biggest detriment, right? I'm really good at process, but sometimes I'm too process oriented and I don't have the ability to think out of the box. That's an example. So it's like it's your superpower. And then how do you utilize that and leverage that as a part of the sales process so that you can be successful? So those are some of the things that I help coach women with. And whenever I hear, I feel like I have to be more like a man, or, I see women making those decisions, I really try to guide them and lead them down, getting in touch with their femininity and their innate skills as a female. So that sort of answer to question one. Then there's, okay, working with, like at Girls Who Sell, we work with mostly college age young women now, but also high school women. And we've even started getting younger, KD. So even positioning sales, with 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, because they're not even aware that sales is a viable career alternative for them. And what I hear a lot from these young women is, one, sales is awful. It's icky. You have to, all you do is spend your time, selling people things that they don't need. And so I have to go through an education process to show them that that is not the truth, and start breaking down some of those myths that are barriers of why women don't go into sales, right? So that's the first thing. But then the second thing I hear is, okay, well, maybe sales is cool, but I don't have the personality for it. And so I asked them, what does that look like for you? Like, what does that mean? What personality do you think you need to have in sales to be successful? And then I take them through, we have a personality archetype um, uh, quiz in our Girls Who Sell Academy that helps them frame that, and to turn, they're like, well, I'm shy, or I'm introverted, or I'm analytic. And I'm like, yes, you are. And
Yes.
guess what? That is your superpower. That is exactly why you're going to be successful in sales. And there are so many different directions that you can take your sales career and leverage that, to be successful. So that was a long-winded answer to your first question.
Guys, no, it was a good answer to the first question. There's no such thing as long or short. There's only interesting or uninteresting, right? So, like, no, that's a good answer to it. Because there's a few things I want to unpack there, because you really started to touch on it towards the end there. It's like, I believe sales has an attraction problem just as much as it has a retention problem
Yes.
when it comes to women in sales, right? So there's the retention, that's one side, but you just started touching on a bit. There's an attraction problem of, like, how do we make it more appealing? Do people understand? I go through the same conversations in the Black community.
Yeah.
Same idea of, like, we have an attraction problem. We're not attracting people to sales enough. So can you touch on that just a little bit more? It sounds like, so are you getting involved with schools? Like, how are you getting this message out there more often?
Yeah, we are. So we're working primarily with colleges and with high schools, and we're bringing our Girls Who Sell Academy, the first program that we launched with our hashtag Explore Sales program, and it does exactly what it says. It's a training program that says, what is professional sales? Why should you consider a career in it? What kind of career options are there? Why are girls good at sales, right? We talk about imposter syndrome and overcoming limiting beliefs, and um, you know, how to, and confidence, right? Building confidence, because those are all issues that women, particularly young women, face, right? And particularly at that age. And then we do go through this whole thing about the personality archetypes, and being able to assess what are your strengths, what are your innate skills, what are the advantages of those skills, but what are some of the areas of opportunities that you might face, if you are bringing that kind of personality skill set to the table. But the main thing is begin to break down some of the myths about what sales is, and particularly around how to navigate through the bro culture to be successful. So yeah, we're working with colleges. We are partnering with organizations, a lot of different organizations right now, because the course is 100% free to students and even to the universities. We're 100% subsidized by corporate sponsorship. So we bring together colleges, corporate sponsors that align with our values and have a real commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to diversifying their sales team, and partner that with them with mentors. And that's sort of the three-legged stool of our program. So that's what we're doing. So my goal is, I am so like a fan of Girls Who Code and what they have done in STEM. Um, I want but schools are not teaching sales, and it's important, or they tuck it in under their marketing or their entrepreneurship or their business programs, and maybe there's a course that needs to change. And we need to show women that sales is a viable career choice for them, that's going to be able to provide them with their not only financial independence, but an ability to really impact business and impact the world.
I love. Are you in touch with Howard Dover at UT Dallas?
I am not.
Okay, we're gonna talk offline. He leads the sales program at UT Dallas, so I'm gonna put y'all in touch because I think this is perfect.
That sounds
So,
great, because
okay.
I'm going to be in Dallas. We'll talk to line, but we have the Heels to Deals. We launched our book this year, and the Heels to Deals, which was, my vision for that book, as you talk about empowering women, but as I thought about how do I go to these colleges and universities and really demonstrate that sales is a great career, and to me, representation matters, and these young women can't be what they can't see, and so giving them exposure to women, diverse women from around the world, who are at the top of their game and successful in their careers, was really important to me. So that's what Heels to Deals was. We brought together over 30 women that share their stories from incredibly diverse backgrounds. And and anyway, we're going to be in Dallas doing a book signing in June. So anyway,
Okay, I'm gonna link y'all up. So I think that's perfect. And that was a bomb right there. And I don't know if that's something you said a bunch of times or that just came out, but they can't be what they can't see.
yep.
That's phenomenal. Like, I've never heard it phrased that way before, and I think that's so true, because it is. We talk about these cultures, if they have no one to look up to, if they don't see themselves somewhere, they can't aspire to that. And I think that's so important, because I want to touch on one thing of, you've said it a few times, of this idea of, like, sell more like a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's probably a lot of men leaders listening right now going, I would never say that, without understanding how they actually say that without saying it, right? And so things that come to mind to me is like, you need to talk less. You need to talk less. You need to be more professional. You need to slow down. Like, and there's the
Microaggressions, right?
aggression, which you don't even think about. So can you touch on that a little bit, kind of on the flip side now, of like, the sales industry, sales leaders, of like the things that maybe we don't understand that we're doing that do make women feel this way?
Yeah, my favorite that I've heard a million times, as I was the only woman in the meeting, is, oh, Heidi will take notes. Heidi, can you bring the coffee and donuts? Even now, even today. So yeah, I mean, the microaggressions are there, and I love to give men the benefit of the doubt that that they're coming from a heart-centered place, and they're trying to do the right thing, and not all men are. I mean, some are really about being aggressive and trying to demean women. So I do believe there are those leaders out there, but for the most part, I believe that men are really committed to diversity and to bringing women into their sales team. And the reason why is because Sorry, my dog. But the reason why is because um, we're better at sales. And so men are not, they've sort of gotten keen on and very smart on, you know what? If I can exponentially increase my revenue and I can accelerate deals through the pipeline and I have a much higher closing percentage, because just about every single way that you can measure sales, women generally outperform their male counterparts. And so as a man, I think they're catching on. They're like, we need to add more women into our team. But it needs to be, to your point, it can't just be a box checking exercise. It can't be a, what I hear a lot is, well, we want to bring more women on, but they don't apply, right? Like we just can't find,
Can't find them. That's the one that gets me all the
find
time. We
them.
can't
We
find them.
can't find them. And I'm like, are you really looking that hard? But that plays into also recruiting strategies, language that's used in recruiting ads. And I think that there is some focus right now because it's been brought to the attentions of people in HR and hiring managers and recruiters that they need to make some changes in the way that they go go to market that is going to appeal to more diverse candidates. And so, we're far from being there, but at least I think there's an awareness of that's why maybe that's why you can't find them because women are not applying. The other thing is, and I know there's, you've probably heard this said before, there's some data around, that women, if they don't meet a high percentage of the job qualifications, that they tend to not apply for a job versus a man is more confident. If they meet 50-60%, they're like, I got this, right? Like that's a good batting average, right? 50-60, I have a shot. Whereas a woman is like, I don't know that I'm qualified and I don't want to waste the time of the recruiter or the company. And I don't want to put myself in a position of rejection, right? And so, we've been working a lot with women to encourage them to apply anyway, regardless of whether they can check 100% of those boxes. But it also plays into recruiting because it's like, do you really need you're hiring for an entry level SDR position and you want them to have 5 years of experience kind of thing. It's like, do you really need that? Do you? And so pushing back when it comes to men and microaggressions, I think that they're just I have met and incredible group of men that are just so passionate about allyship and supporting women in business. And I have such an incredible appreciation for them. But I think educating themselves, about the issues, really making a concerted effort to try to understand and listen to, and then try to make changes. So the one thing is you get women in, okay, because maybe you change your recruiting language, maybe you change where you're recruiting, but then how do you retain them? So you need to begin as men in leadership positions, and even as women too, but as men in leadership positions to understand what it's going to take. So to provide them with the right training, to provide them with a culture and benefits that's going to support the the incredible responsibilities that a woman takes on relative to family and work and all of the other things that kind of fall on our plate, right? So creating a culture and then also providing very clear career pathing opportunities so that you can move them into the pipeline. I think the big change.
I want to jump in there real quick. So I have a question before I lose it.
Okay.
I have a question, and I don't want to lose this. And also, feel free to not answer this question if it feels too much of like I have to answer for all women everywhere type questions, right? Because you are you, right? So, but the question I have around this, I've talked about this internally. Do you think if there was a change in the sales comp structure, it might attract more women into the sales industry, like this 50-50 split versus like a consistent higher base salary. Do you think if that was different, would that change anything in your opinion?
That's a good question. Well, I think first, paying women equitably might be the first
Yeah, well, yes,
step.
yes.
So even from a base salary perspective, it would be nice to
Fair point. Fair
be
point.
paid equitably. Um, I personally, don't work for my base, although have had good base salaries. But I think any really good salesperson, gender neutral, gender taking gender out of it, any really good salesperson is going to be all about the total compensation package and the upside uh, that they can make from a commissions perspective. So I know every industry is a bit different in terms of the way they structure their commission plans, but I think I think a good base where, particularly in a complex sales environment where there are longer sales cycle, is really important because you don't want your um, salesperson worried about how they're going to pay their bills. Give them enough that they're going to be able to have you know, a living, and be
Right.
able to pay their bills, but then really compensate them on the upside with no caps in order to to drive as much income as possible. I would not take a job if there was a cap, an upside cap, right? So I don't know. I don't. I think women just want to be paid equitably and given the same shot as men. And once we get in and we start performing, we're gonna be able to succeed for sure. The one other thing too, just that I was kind of to keep my earlier train of thought was about as we get more women into leadership positions. What's interesting, Katie, is that women tend to hire women. So men, have a desire to hire more women, whereas women are super committed to hiring more women. And so I think in terms of, the strategy to close that gender gap is as we get more women into leadership roles, then they're going to be bringing more women into the pipeline. And that might not be a popular opinion. I don't know. Maybe some men will really be out of sorts with that, but
Of course.
um,
Of course.
but I do believe that.
Mhm. Yeah, I believe it, and again, I agree with it. And it's always this topic's always going to rattle. It's always going to rattle some people, and I don't care. You don't care. That's why we're having this
Right.
conversation, right? It's like to talk about this because, truthfully, that's a whole. We don't have enough time today, but talking about women in sales leadership is a whole nother bag to unpack. Because same idea of like if they're not, how did you say this? Like, can't be what they can't see if there's not female leaders, and now it's almost that cycle. Then it's hard to get women into sales leadership because they don't see women in sales leadership and they don't see that, and
It
it
just
is a cycle. So
perpetuates
important.
itself, right? It's just
It's
this.
like,
It's like this domino effect.
mhm. And you do, and you mentioned this like that the phrase of like you can't find them, and this is where I always try to like talk. It's like applications are not finding. You go. You can find. You're just not trying to find. There's organizations like yours. There's organizations across this country where they're literally built for this purpose. Have you really tried to find? Have you like really? You tried? You went to Girls Who Sell and they said no. They wouldn't help and so you have to go find them and you touched on it very briefly and I just want to make sure we call it out is the language because how those job ads are written again sometimes can go the wrong direction.
Kill
Killer,
it.
hunter, aggressive, crusher. And if you don't identify with those words, because when you opened up and you said the skills that you had and you talked about listening, empathy, understanding, process-oriented, relationship builder, storyteller.
Being part of a team, team
Being part of a team.
orientation.
None of that was killer, crusher, sniper, all-star, rock star.
Exactly.
And so it's like, y'all listen, I want you to pay attention to the language in your ads because same idea, right? Someone like a Heidi might read and be like, yo, I got that. But not everybody. And so you could be pushing a whole segment of people away because they read it and they don't identify with that language. And I think like you touched on it super quick. And I just wanted to call that out of like the job ads, the recruiting ads, how you're messaging people on LinkedIn, like all of that matters.
Even the interview process, right? Of what you're, oh my goodness, we could do a whole other show on the questions that you ask during the interview process. Tend to, all the sports analogies and, all this stuff. And so I just think it's an awareness, right? It just starts with an awareness and a commitment to get educated. And I think if you're, if you have a willingness to do that and open your heart and open your mind to people who are different than you, then we have the ability to change the world, right? And it doesn't only relate to girls, to girls in sales, right? I mean, I think it relates to, any kind of diversity hire that people just need to become more aware. And I think I can't find them discussion is just because they are so narrow in terms of the definition of what's going to be successful or what they're looking for. And I just think that we just have to just bust that up and start looking at non-traditional channels and giving people with different levels of experience or from different cultures and different backgrounds opportunities to succeed. And, if we don't, then we're not going to, I'm here going on 33, 34 years, and I haven't seen that much change. And frankly, Katie, I don't want to be here another 30 years from now having the same conversation. Or, the women that I've mentored and put into sales, I certainly hope that what we're doing will help make the world a little bit better than it is today. And that we're opening up doors so that we can change the conversation.
I love it. And you already are. And that's what's so cool. Is like we're making progress. At least I hope we're making progress because it's because of people like you out there taking action. Awareness is only the first step. You gotta take action because of the awareness, right? Like you actually have to take action with the awareness. And so I knew there was no way I was gonna be able to keep this under the time frame that I wanted to. There's still so much more I want to talk to you about. So like we'll probably do a part 2 would be my guess here. But like where can people go get more of what you're putting out? Where can they find the book? Where can they learn about the academy? Like where can they go to learn more about the action you're taking for this particular topic?
So I am really accessible through LinkedIn. So you can look me up under Heidi Solomon-Orlick. And I love to connect. Don't be shy, reach out. And I want to, connect with you and see how I can help you. So that's, definitely reach out. The second way is they can learn more about Girls Who Sell and the Academy through our website at www.girlzwhoSell.com, and they can apply. We're just finishing our second cohort right now. We're going to start enrolling for a third and fourth cohort. So definitely go on to that. And the book, it's really wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart. I mean, anywhere that you can buy a book, you can go just, but Amazon's probably the best place, and just put in Heels to Deals, how women are dominating in business to business sales, and it'll pop right up.
Hell yes. Heidi, this was phenomenal. Like I said, we got to go part 2 because we got more to unpack. We got more things to get into here, but I really, really appreciate the energy, the insights, and the actions people can take. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank you, and thanks for wearing our Girls Who Sell Superpower hat and representing. I really appreciate it. Your allyship
My 2 daughters
is noted.
Okay, my 2 daughters are gonna get home from school today, and I can guarantee.
Oh my gosh, I gotta send you a second one now, so they both have it.
I do need 2. So awesome, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, KB.